What is going on, everybody? Delayed start to our Tuesday edition of the Daily Dime here at FTN Fantasy. Zac Graham, aka Kawaisenberg, DFS, and Alex Blickle back in the building. Alex, how was your Thanksgiving? How was your Monday? Obviously, we had kind of right off the rip, just a gut punch with the picks last night with Jaleel McLaughlin, and of course, he does nothing the rest of the game. But how you been, man? It's been almost a week now.
It has, and we were so damn close last night because it's always so frustrating when the toughest pick of the night, the Marvin Mims ladder on his longest reception gets there on the 29.5, gets there on the 39.5 for 8.88x, and we can't hit the 3-pick play. McLaughlin failed, and then Jordan Akins failed as well. We got there on the sacks, we got there on the Sutton longest reception. We just didn't have that right combination. So we're still doing really well. We had that really big Thanksgiving day with the Turpin longest reception ladder, which was fantastic. So I don't know why we're hitting those longest reception ladders so we can't get the final leg last night, but so close and excited to jump back in NBA because personally I haven't played NBA in 5 days.
I'm glad you brought up the Turpin prop from Thanksgiving Day because I was at my in-laws and I jumped up when he got to 30 yards. I was like, oh, now we're cooking. But yeah, man, the NBA side last night too started off real well. DeJounte Murray soared past that prop, which was my favorite of the night. But then Jalen Johnson stalls on 13 after I want to say he had 10, 2 minutes into the second half.
Yeah.
And speaking of guys hot starts and then stalling, Anthony Davis, 10 first quarter points. So feeling good about the 26.5. Finished with 12, Alex. So Lakers, bit of a dud last night. But, I mentioned on yesterday's stream when I was solo, I am, from my Spurs corner real quick, this is the most important Spurs game there's been in at least 4 years, maybe longer. So I'm really pumped for this one tonight. And just overall with the NBA Cup, we've got some, implications in these games for teams moving on in the knockout round by either winning their groups or looking to the wild card and some of the point differential battles that will go on during this slate. So just real quick, Knicks and Magic, that is a win and get in. Pistons and Bucks, that is a win and get in. Those are battles for the top of those groups out east. All of those teams except the Knicks are live for the wild card if they lose. Boston also live for the wild card. We don't need to get into the exact point differential numbers here. If you're interested, you can go look at the NBA Cup standings yourself. In the West, I mentioned Spurs advance with a win over the Suns. The Thunder can advance with a win, and the Spurs losing to the Suns. Thunder and Dallas both need to win by as much as possible no matter what. Spurs, Thunder, Suns, Clippers, Blazers, Mavericks, Nuggets, Grizzlies technically alive for the wild card, but it's really Spurs, Thunder, and Dallas there, I think, as the three teams that are really in contention for that wild card. So keep that in mind today, whether it's from a DFS perspective, props, sides, what have you. It should be a really fun slate.
Yeah, I know it's relevant for at least one of your props. So why don't we jump in right now? And I see our guy Derek in here saying he can't check the live. He's got a question about Tyrese Maxey. So as we get into some of these picks, should we just start with our favorite Maxey pick?
Yeah, so I was going to actually say that. Good to see Derek in here, even though I know he's not watching live. I'm sure he'll catch this on the way back. Let's talk Maxey first. And we're actually not going to the rebounds here, Derek, but kind of an old reliable here for us, really dating back to last season before we were doing the Daily Dime stream, and you and I were just going back and forth in the mornings, taking some of our favorite prop picks. We're going to Maxey's first quarter points set at 5.5. I'll let you talk more about your boy here in Philly and why we like this pick so much tonight.
As you said, it started last season. We just saw he would come out super aggressive offensively. I think part of it too is he's so much faster than everybody else that it sometimes takes the defense a possession to go, oh yeah, that's right, he's that fast. So he was getting a lot of really easy buckets early on in the first quarter. And now, of course, we're still seeing that aggression. He hasn't played as much this season, coming back from injury. Also been, a little bit of weird rotations at times where they're trying to figure out what to do with Paul George, what to do with Embiid. But since Embiid has been out, Maxey has gotten 10 and 9 first quarter minutes. We're seeing the shot volume. He's gotten there easily 2 games ago and then got stuck on 5 points last game, but was 2 of 7 from the field and was like every single time he had the ball, he was looking to create his own shot, almost to the point where it was like, dude, you're taking some wild shots here, but it's nice that he's being that aggressive.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like he's actually played even more minutes than that to start third quarters, and he's been incredible in the third quarter the last couple times. So seeing like him actually score well and efficiently, I think is just a great indicator that the fact that he scored 6 and 5 in the first quarter of the last two games, that's going up before it goes down. So this 5.5 number I just think is too low. I'm also pretty interested in laddering this. We saw him score 14 in the third quarter a game ago, and something crazy like that. I think it was 11 the game prior in the third quarter. So he scores in bunches. I wish these multipliers were a little bit higher, but you can get to some pretty big numbers here at some pretty attainable lines for him. So I'm interested in the ladder, but I'm extremely interested in just this base over 5.5 first quarter points.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that 8.5 isn't better. Looks like it's like 1.85x or something. So like it's either that or going all the way up to the 11.5.
That's what I think.
4.5. But yeah, the 5.5 just feels really, really good. Like also the matchup against this shorthanded Charlotte team. Like we'll talk about them from a DFS perspective, but and they looks like their front court's coming back. Nick Richards was back last game. Mark Williams was upgraded to questionable here, so I would expect to see him off the bench as well. But there's nothing about this Charlotte team as a whole that makes me shy away from Maxey's first quarter prop here. And I think another nice little cookie for him in the first quarter is that we see, as long as this holds here tonight with Coach Nurse, Jared McCain was out of the starting group last game, and we know Jared McCain likes himself some Jared McCain with the high shot volume, the high usage. Of course, some of that came without Maxey on the floor, but I don't think it hurts personally to get McCain out of that starting unit here for the majority of Maxey's first quarter run, or this projected first quarter run. So yeah, I really like this prop for what it's worth. Last year, 5.9 points per game in the first quarter, just over 9 minutes per game. So again, the significant rotation is what we're really looking at there. So really 9+ minutes on average in the first quarter over more than a season sample size. Of course, we've had a couple pieces interchanged between the two seasons, but just to emphasize that you and I this is one of those guys that we've looked at over multiple seasons for these first quarter props, and much more concentrated usage than, like our guy Derek White.
Yeah, absolutely more than Derek White. I'm curious your thoughts on this one. Paul George over 1.5 first quarter assists. It's a very small sample for Paul George in first quarters this year. He has not played as much as us Sixers fans would have liked, but I have noticed he's been not necessarily differential in the first quarters, but he's kind of looked to get other guys involved and kind of get his own rhythm in the game before he starts looking for his own shot. Had 4 first quarter assists in that last game. So I like the 1.35x number, but this isn't a conviction play by any means for me. What are your thoughts on the Paul George over 1.5 first quarter assists?
I mean, it is a limited sample that we have from PG this season, right? But just over 250 minutes, 29.5% usage assist rate. That's the highest assist rate on the team. So like I think you might be onto something there.
Yeah, and I do think it's correlated with Maxey. We did see a couple times. I think there was like one specific possession where Maxey actually fed the ball into Paul George in the post. A double came. George kicked it out to Maxey. For some reason, Maxey decided instead of taking the 3, he passed it to Andre Drummond, who took the 3. And I was like, what did I just see? But it could have been a Maxey 3 ball off a Paul George assist. So that path is definitely there. I will mix this Paul George over 1.5 first quarter assists in with the Tyrese Maxey over 5.5 first quarter points, but I'm not going to call it a conviction play. So we'll remove it for now. Why don't we go to your favorite pick of the night?
Yeah, this is a conviction play for me here tonight. John Collins. Now, Utah, of course, taking on OKC tonight. And like I mentioned earlier, it is in OKC's interest to beat the absolute crap out of the Jazz here tonight, because if they can win and advance if the Spurs lose, but they're not going to rely on that. And varying start times for these two games as well. But I'm looking again, like I mentioned, John Collins here. That points prop is down to 15.5. And of course, I respect the matchup, the individual matchup, the overall defensive ability that this Thunder team has up and down their roster, even without Chet, even without Alex Caruso. But John Collins without Jordan Clarkson this season, over this number in 5 of 6 games. The one miss, he only played 22 minutes, and he had 15 points in those 22 minutes. He's averaging 17.9 points per game on the season. He's over in 12 of his 19 appearances, over this number in 6 straight, and over in 9 of 10 games when playing 30 or more minutes this season. We've got him projected for 34 here in the FTN model this morning, and he's been over 32 minutes and 50 seconds in 5 straight games. So again, with no Jordan Clarkson, Kyle Filipowski still out, and just for good measure, he wasn't going to factor in all likelihood here, but Micah Potter is now questionable as of 2 minutes ago. Another front court body potentially going down here for Utah tonight. So I really like this John Collins over, and so does the model. We've got him projected, I believe, for right around 19 points, which is where he's been hovering in the projections here at FTN with Jordan Clarkson out. And again, he's over in 6 straight. I don't know why this number continues to come down outside of potential blowout. And again, Utah is not playing for point differential tonight, so they don't have that incentive. But John Collins is just a higher usage, a better scorer than this line indicates to me. And the projection model here lines up with that thinking.
Yeah, as a tough of a matchup as this OKC team is, his individual matchup isn't like crazy difficult. So I think I'm with you for sure on this one. And it sounds like we're going to the same game, just the other side for your next pick.
Yeah, so let's take advantage of OKC wanting to beat the pants off of Utah here tonight. And I know Derek was asking about Isaiah Hartenstein rebounds, and I think you can attack Hartenstein. I was looking at him and J-Dub and SGA this morning. For me, it's SGA, and it's the points. It's set at 30.5 here on Underdog this morning. It's 31.5 over there on Prize Picks, so I do prefer it here on Underdog. And so outside of the point differential incentive here, he's projected for a hair above 33 in the FTN projections here this morning. He's over this 30.5 number in 7 of 10 games without Chet this season, and in 4 straight. And he's over in 7 of 8 games without Chet when playing 34 or more minutes. We've got him projected for 37 here tonight, which maybe that's a minute or two hot on a normal night, but 37 in this scenario makes a lot of sense to me, and I don't think it's crazy to see him exceed that 37-minute projection there. So I'm a big fan of this SGA points prop, and I think these two correlate well together if the game does stay in the balance. And I think, let me double check here. I think it was a 10-point spread last time I looked. We're 13.5 here, but again, this stays in single digits into the fourth quarter. You're going to get full minutes out of John Collins, and we know SGA is going to be out there because of the NBA Cup implications. So big fan of SGA's over on 30.5 as well.
Yeah, I also wanted to touch a second on the Hartenstein rebounds. It's worth noting his rebound per minute this season is well above his career average and his last season average. So if you're just looking at what Hartenstein has done so far this season in his minutes, his rebounds look great. But when you zoom out a little bit and you get beyond, what is it, like a 5-game sample that we've seen from him this year, it doesn't look quite as good. So I'm with you favoring the Gilgeous-Alexander pick here. And I don't think the Hartenstein pick is bad. It's just not as good as it looks if you're just looking at what he's done on the glass so far.
Right. And I think too, some of that could be real for the way OKC looks right now, because I don't think he's ever been on a team with this big of a role with no other legitimate rebounders around him. You could point back to the Knicks run where Mitchell Robinson was in and out and mostly out, and you weren't getting really Jericho Sims, and there was a lot of iHeart, right? But he also had Josh Hart next to him, was one of the best rebounding wings in the league. There was some Julius Randle until January or February last year. Again, I do think these inflated numbers, maybe it doesn't stick where it is, but I could see the career high coming this season. But again, on this slate where these lines are, it's not something that I'm looking to attack personally at this point of the day.
Yeah, I think I'm in complete agreement with you there.
You got anything else? I got 1, maybe 2 more picks that I've been eyeing here. I know that we want to. Yeah, okay, nice. That's what I was about to say. Let's see if the stocks are here.
Love it.
Okay, Scotty Barnes. I'm talking about Scotty Barnes. Gonna love him in DFS again tonight. If people listen to me talk about these slates, they know I love me some Scotty Barnes. So not that necessarily stands out to me here in terms of the stocks. What is do we have an Isaiah Hartenstein stocks line? Because we could attack that Walker Kessler, John Collins front court.
We do. We have 2.5. I will say that matchup hasn't been quite as good over the last 10 games. Let me bring this up here.
Yeah.
23%, negative 23% for steals, plus 41% for blocks for opposing centers against Utah. So it's still a good matchup. Don't get me wrong. It's just not what it was. Anytime Wemby's at 4.5, we've had interest and obviously for good reason there. Eason, anytime he's been at 2.5, we've had interest. So there are a lot of them to consider. Let's see how Hartenstein has done in the stocks department so far.
Of course, that Wembanyama one is going to jump off the page to me, but I always like to see let's see what the model says. Try to take the fandom out of it, right? It's going to recommend an over coming up just shy of 5.5 in the projection. So again, I don't like that as much as I like the Maxey first quarter pick. I don't like that as much as I like the John Collins pick. And I probably would lean, if I have to Nerf gun to my head, SGA pick or Wemby stocks, I'm probably still leaning to the SGA points. But, if we get to the end here and we need an extra pick to make this a sixer, that would be one I'm clearly totally fine with going to, especially in a game where I think we could see Wemby put up a minutes high tonight on the season, which coming into the night, I think is about 36.5 minutes. Not that we should project that, but if he's gonna play 37 plus, probably this do or die game is where you're gonna see it.
I think the one that I like the most is Tari Eason over 2.5 at 1.07x. He's averaging 3.1 on the season. Sacramento, a pretty neutral stocks matchup. So it's just, for one thing, it's too low of a line, and for another, it shouldn't be boosted. If anything, it should go down to 0.8x or something like that. So I think that's still a pretty good one.
See what else we've got here. I think I saw the SAR line there. If they run the same lineup again tonight, he's going to be playing the 4, which against Cleveland, I think it makes sense for Washington to run those two bigs out there once again. Let's see what the model has for SAR. Yeah, so it's just a hair over 3 stocks, 1.17x, but I think that's a 16-point line right now. Yeah, 16-point dogs are the Wizards on the road here.
So bad.
I know. Yeah, I don't think that really stands out to me. They're dangling the 1.17x in front of me. Albert pointing out Wemby's 3.5 blocks is at 1.12x. I do kind of like that. One thing we should mention too, no use of Nurkic for the Suns, so that's going to come into play more for our DFS lineups and potential values with Mason Plumlee or Oso Ighodaro. Maybe you see Wemby guarding some Kevin Durant tonight. I don't think that's out of the question. And also for the Spurs side, Jeremy Sohan will make his return. So adding to my fandom excitement, Alex, this will be the first game we've had Wembanyama, Sohan, Vassell, and Castle all active. So I've been waiting for that young core to get healthy. Yeah. Pirtle against, if we're going to go to Pirtle, I'd probably just rather go to Scotty. Brolo's sub 1.
The stocks from Giannis this season are down just 1.9 per game, but man, 2.5 just always seems low for him.
God, give me the fantasy point props here, underdog. I will say I was looking at the fantasy point props. And do we have? It's Tuesday. Are there taco? Okay, there's the taco. Towns rebounds from 11.5 to 9.5. I'm gonna take it, but that's just that's not a good looking taco. I'm not pulling over on the side of the road to pick one of those up. But if you're just gonna serve it to me here at home, I guess I'll take the discount. But for the fantasy score props over there on Prize Picks, Tobias Harris 23.5 is 4 to 6 points too low. That's a windmill slam over for me there on Prize Picks. And I'm sure we can get a number of these props that we've been talking about here on Underdog over on Prize Picks as well. So, of course, we'll be paying attention to those tacos throughout the day. So the one other one I really wanted to touch on, and then there's one I think I'm kind of hovering over at this point in the morning. The first one is Steph Curry. You've got Dubs and Nuggets here tonight. Of course, the Dubs are already through. The Nuggets technically playing for point differential and the slim chance at a wild card berth. But this is also still, keep in mind, these teams that don't have the cup incentive tonight, this is still a regular season game that counts towards the standings. So Steph Curry, higher than 4.5 rebounds, was 1.11x last time I checked here on Underdog. He's averaging 5.5 on the season. And last season, and Mike Randall has actually talked about this on the FTN Fast Break podcast a couple times, that he thought that there was a correlation between Chris Paul being on the Warriors and Steph's rebound averages coming down. Last season was the first time since 2016-17 that he averaged less than 5.1 rebounds per game. In his last 12 matchups against Nikola Jokic, over in 7 of those 12. He's over in 9 of 15 games this season. 3 of his 6 misses were right there at 4 rebounds. And only 1 of the 9 times that it's gone over this number has it been 5. So it's not like he's just sitting right above that number. He's gone well over 4.5 in 8 of these 15 games this season. We've got him projected right around 6 here tonight. So the fact that we're also getting the +1 multiplier on this, I like taking Steph Curry in my Underdog entries here on Tuesday.
Yeah, I like this one. I think Mike has a really good point there, because a lot of the time when do these guards get those rebounds? When they're just like being kind of hidden in the corner defensively, and that was often Chris Paul being hidden in the corner defensively. Now it can be Steph more often than not. So yeah, I think that's a really good read on it, and it's definitely showing up in the data.
The other one I'm looking at that I haven't actually put into any entries yet this morning is Anthony Simons higher than 17.5 points. So this is the late night hammer. You won't find this on DraftKings. You'll have it on the FanDuel main slate. Of course, we're not worried about that for our prop purposes, but at the Clippers tonight, Clippers have kind of taken on this newfound defensive identity, right? We knew about, Paul George and Kawhi in the past, but with Paul George out of town, Kawhi has not made his debut yet. They have kind of kept that up, and for me, Alex, like they've kind of strengthened their identity on the defensive end this season with how well they've been playing with those two guys absent. But Anthony Simons on the other side, 17.5 points in the 10 games this season that he has played 32 minutes or more. He's over in 9 of those 10 games. Again, I do think this is a spot where, are we shocked if Anthony Simons goes out and shoots 2 for 14, the Blazers get run off the floor and he doesn't get to full minutes and comes up well short of this? Absolutely. It is an 8.5 point spread there in Clipperland in the Intuit Dome, where, Alex, I don't know if you have seen this over the last couple of days. The opponent free throw shooting on the end of the court where the wall is, right, the supporters section for the Clippers, where it's people going like they are literally, I think, bound by contract in their tickets to be cheering for the Clippers and doing crazy things. The other night there was somebody that had a horse head on and a sign that says, "I miss you, Dad," when Jokic was at the free throw line shooting free throws. The opponent's average on that basket through, 17-ish games or something, would be the lowest opponent free throw rate on the road in the last 9 seasons. 9 seasons. So shout out Steve Ballmer for this idea. And I think this should catch on many other places. But again, that doesn't help Anthony Simons for one half of this game either. I just wanted to talk about that because I think it's really interesting and pretty funny. But I think you could see Simons soar over this number, or you could see him really crater. So like I said, this is not one that I have in any of my entries yet this morning, but one that I'm kind of tiptoeing around at this point and probably going to dive into a little deeper after the stream. If I do put this in some entries, I will let our subscribers know in that Pick'em Games channel.
Yeah, so we do have enough to get to a 6-pick play. We've got these. I think the core is Tyrese Maxey over 5.5 first quarter points, John Collins over 15.5 points, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over 30.5 points. Then you mix in the Steph Curry over 4.5 rebounds. You can go to Simons over 17.5 points. You can go to Tari Eason over 2.5 stocks. And then remember, we also have the Paul George over 1.5 first quarter assists at 1.35x correlating with Tyrese Maxey. So I'm with you. I don't know exactly what combinations I'm going to run yet beyond that just core 3-pick play. But once I do, I'll have it loaded up in our tracker. For anyone watching who's not a subscriber, or if you are a subscriber and you forget, we have now posted a link to a Google sheet that shows every single pick we make, every single play we put in. You can see, I'll actually bring this up right now. This is how we're doing so far this season, right? 130% ROI in NFL, 91.7% total. It's been a really, really fun underdog season. This is all since the start of the NBA year. So we're rolling, and hopefully we can just keep that going tonight.
Yeah, I have put in kind of the round robin of 3-pick plays with those 4 that you have on the screen right there this morning. But of course, like I mentioned on Prize Picks, right? It's Tuesday. We're going to get those discounts. We've got the Towns Taco on the board. So I'm going to be looking through the fantasy props, some of the other lines there that are different between Underdog and Prize Picks. So our subscribers in the Pick'em Games channel will get those props as well. When the fantasy point props pop on Underdog, I always take a spin through there. So maybe we get up to a more solid 6-pick throughout the day. So just keep your eyes out for that.
Yeah, I was going to say there were a couple guys that we were like close to on the stocks upside that would be really intriguing if we do get fantasy points on there, because we might have like small leans on points and a small lean on rebounds and a small lean on stocks. And none of those are great, but you add up those small leans and put them towards a fantasy point number, and all of a sudden we love it. So definitely come back later and see if we have any of those fantasy points props. All right, should we take a look at the DFS slate?
Yeah, real quick, let's dive in here. Completely different from yesterday in terms of the injury reports. None of these teams are on a back-to-back set here, or on the second end, rather. So tomorrow, we'll probably be waiting on a couple injury reports, but here today, much more clear picture than we had on yesterday's 4-gamer. If Jonas Valanciunas starts again, I totally get this. And you see that the GPP score highest kind of in its own tier right now on the morning run. And that's with 36% projected ownership right there. So like if he gets the start again, he is a good enough fantasy producer that even in this matchup against Cleveland, that price just kind of makes you, at least you have to consider, you really have to work to get him out of your lineup at that point. If you get J-Val starting. John Collins, been a mainstay in the GPP scores, and it's done pretty well. Like he is coming in right in those low 40s kind of game in, game out with this recent Clarkson absence. So I think what's also playing into that, sub 5% ownership there on a slate where we don't have at this point in the morning a ton of standout value. Some of those pieces that I think are picking up, if we sort by ownership, we will see some of these Charlotte guys come up to the top. You see Micic right there, 4,500 getting the start, like highest owned player in the slate. And for where we are right now, I totally get it. And that's chalk I would probably be eating. Scotty Barnes is my favorite play on the slate right now at 8,300. So I'm a little bit bummed that he's 34% projected owned there, guard and forward eligible, 8,300 matchup against the Pacers. I think second highest implied total on this slate, 238. Pacers are 3-point road favorites. So I love Scotty Barnes. Hope that ownership comes down throughout the day. And then you see more Charlotte. Tijan Salon, 31% at 3,800. I still feel gross about putting that very highly owned Salon at 3,800 into my lineups. But if the slate started right now, it would be really hard for me to full fade him because we don't have a ton of standout value. And then Brandon Miller, of course, kind of the high usage option there against Philadelphia. I'm a little bit more hesitant to go to Miller because 211 implied total in that game. So am I getting 0 in my 20 max build? Probably not, but probably coming in under, again, if the slate started in 5 minutes, under on Brandon Miller at nearly 30%. The other kind of standout value opportunity here this morning is that Phoenix front court that I mentioned earlier. No Yusuf Nurkic. So you see Mason Plumlee picking up 21% projected ownership. Oso Iguodala is also going to garner some interest right now. He's at 10%. And I'm kind of bummed about that because I thought people would go to Oso after the minutes split last game was so heavily in his favor. Mason Plumlee's just a much better fantasy producer at this point. So even if we project him for like, I don't know, you can project him for probably 6 or 8 less minutes than Oso. And I would probably still have more interest in Mason Plumlee. They're going to need that size with Wembanyama out there. But if we're getting double the ownership on Mason Plumlee, then my plan is foiled, and I don't feel like I have much leverage there. So it's something that I will be keeping my eye on, that ownership number throughout the day here.
Yeah, it seems like we're a little light on Plumlee's minutes too, only having him projected at 8.
Well, that will also.
Yeah, where do you think his minutes have to get to the point where you're really interested in him?
I mean, man, at 4K, right, on DraftKings, like I'd probably have interest at 18, but I think he plays into the 20s here tonight. Because again, I just don't think that rookie Oso Ighodaro, like those guys are very similar size-wise, at least in terms of height. I think Plumlee's got him by like 15 or 20 pounds. And not that you need the biggest, most hulking guy out there for Wembanyama, who, weighs about as much as me, even at 7'5". But like, you just need that physical, that sheer size out there to handle him on the boards, to handle him the few times he's going to go into the post. Because apparently he's like one of the greatest shooters in the league right now over the last 8 games. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see once we get those the minutes projections dialed in there for the Phoenix front court, what it does to the fantasy point projections, the GPP scores of those front court guys for the Suns.
Yeah, one final note I wanted to make, going all the way back to Valanciunas. I would feel a lot worse about this 28-minute projection that we have for him if it wasn't against a team with like the 2 big guys that actually allow Washington to play that double big lineup a little bit more than what we would typically view as acceptable. So I think his minutes floor is a little better today. His minutes ceiling also a little bit better today. And that fantasy point per minute ceiling is always crazy good.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other notes I had. I do think, like, we talked about Hartenstein in the prop market. I do think he's still a little bit underpriced for what his role has been here this year. You see him still at 7,300. He's averaging over 40 DK points a game in his 5 appearances, I think it was. So he's not my favorite play on the slate, but I still think he's very, very solid in that kind of upper mid range. And then over there on FanDuel, I don't think we've said a word about Magic and Knicks and that being a win and get in game for the spot from that. I think it's East Group A. That is Suggs at 6,500 on FanDuel, point and shooting guard eligible. I just have a little bit of interest there. I don't know how well he's going to project. I have not looked here this morning, but you see, that's what I thought. Not a lot of people are going to go to him. 1% projected ownership. And the Magic need the points too if they lose. So I think we're going to get big minutes out of him here. And 6,500 for a guy who can contribute across the box score, I think he can get you there even if he's not having the biggest scoring output on the night. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as a sneaky GPP play, especially if ownership coalesces around the few value pieces we have, right? Like Valanciunas over there is sub 6. I would imagine he's going to be pull a bunch of big ownership. Misic over there is very, very cheap. I think Salon is a little bit more expensive. You see the ownership here, right? Like Kuminga, Wiggins, those aren't even the guys that stand out to me from Golden State. If Brandon Pajemski starts again at the 2 and plays 30 plus minutes, he looks really good. Guard forward eligible, I think 5,500 there. For Golden State, Cade in the must-win spot. Good matchup against the Bucks. He's 8,900 on FanDuel. And then I mentioned, Oso Ighodaro's got the forward eligibility, Plumlee center only. So maybe I prefer Oso over there on FanDuel because there are other center only guys that I have a lot of interest in there. But that Phoenix front court might be a stay away for me on FanDuel if the Phoenix front court ownership just keeps rising.
Also, going back to Suggs, the stocks upside really just plays even that much better on FanDuel with it being 3 points each. So anytime Suggs is 1%, I'm going to have interest.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think we will probably get on an 11-game slate like this, we will probably get a curveball or 2 thrown our way over the next 6 hours leading up to lock, which could completely turn this slate on its head. Overall, right now, it's looking like more of a balanced type of slate, just given the lack of standout value that we have really on both sites, which could provide some interesting leverage opportunities on some of the spend ups on a Victor Wembanyama at 10-6, right? Pulling 10% projected ownership. Like, Wembanyama has shown that he gets up for big games. He turns it on in the fourth quarter, just in the way he's been producing. He had his best fantasy game of the year last time out, at least on DraftKings. Maybe one of those big stock games, his 5x5 got him a higher score on FanDuel a couple weeks ago. But 10% owned Wemby here in a must win. I have interest there. Of course, SGA for $300 cheaper. And then Luka, like, Kyrie is back. So maybe that takes some of the shine off Luka, but we know that they're also playing for point differential. They're 4-point home favorites, Alex. 244 implied total. So, like, maybe Luka is under owned too. I think it's going to be a really fun slate, just kind of from a theory perspective here. And I'm excited to get closer to lock and see how things shake out.
Yeah, I think the GPP scores are kind of saying both strategies work, where you can pay up for some of these under-owned spend ups, like in this little trio of Wemby, Luka, and Shea, or you can also just load up on kind of mid-tier plays, Valanciunas, Collins, Barrett under $8,000. You've got two more here in the 6K range in Hart and Kessler. So totally different types of builds, and the GPP scores are kind of saying you can play either, which makes it a pretty fun slate to build lineups for.
Well, and I see Weisberg in here. Good to see you, Mike. He says Podziemski has played pretty terribly since getting inserted into the starting lineup. Kerr's been getting killed locally. I'll say that last part. I don't really care. Fan bases are dumb, all of them. And I don't think that, look, Steve Kerr is a good coach. I'm sorry to anybody who thinks otherwise. And I will be honest, I have not had eyes on those two games for the Warriors, but on paper, I think he's been fine over those two games. 8 of 18 from the field, 3 of 8 from three, hasn't missed a free throw. 12, 8, and 5 in one game, 12, 7, 4, 1 and 1 in the other. And the most important thing to me, 30 and 33 minutes in those games on a slate where we don't have a ton of standout value. A guy who can contribute across the box score like Podziemski can. He's just somebody I'm going to have interest in. Not on the DK main slate, but probably a late slate option there, and certainly an option on the FanDuel main, because he also would give you flexibility headed into those late games for any sort of news that happens after the main slate locks.
Yep, agree with all that. Any closing thoughts on the slate?
No, man, I'm excited for it. And there's a lot of Spurs talk when you listen to me here at FTN, but I don't think I've ever said this. Go Spurs, go, man! Let's get to the knockout rounds. I'm ready for meaningful basketball in South Central Texas.
Go Spurs, go Sixers, go Maxey in the first quarter. All right, guys, we will catch you tomorrow, same time. Actually, not the same time. We'll be on time tomorrow, right at noon. So we will see you then.